Hi. Sex addiction. All right, we're going to talk about sexual problems and solutions. Number 10, sex addiction. Are you a sex addict? Times have changed, okay? So the first thing I want you to understand is that we do not define the sex addict the same way we used to define the sex addict many years ago. There's a lot of controversy around this issue. So I want to sort of explain to you, first of all, that, an addiction usually interferes with your function, your daily activities. So if you are addicted to anything, whether it's sex, food, shopping, men, women, whatever it is, the question is, are you able to contain it? Are you able to do your normal activities, go to work, come back, relate with your partner, play with your friends, family, go out with your guys, gals, do your thing? Or do you get obsessed, or are you compulsed to do something that you really, really shouldn't be doing, and you know you shouldn't be doing it, and you can't control it? Okay? So the new definition by the World Health Organization really has been changed for the ICD-11 that's coming up, which is a way of diagnosing certain diseases in other countries. Here we use the DSM-5. It hasn't gotten to the DSM-5 yet, but I'm sure it's going to be there soon. But the DSM-5 in America, we decided not to put sex addiction in there because sex addiction is really so vague. It doesn't really tell us, by following certain rules and regulations and certain tests that we don't have, how we can say who is a sex addict and who's not. So luckily, gladly, it was not put in the DSM-5 because sex addiction is such a vague topic, and it's really hard to categorize. So I'm going to try my best, and I'm saying this just from the bottom of my heart. I really don't have the expertise in treating sex addicts, but I do want to bring to the forefront, to light, that you're not an addict unless it's interfering severely for over 6 months, right, with your daily functions, your daily activities, your normal activities. Okay, so I'm going to read to you what the World Health Organization says. Okay, so they say it's not called a sexual addiction. They prefer to call it a compulsive sexual behavior disorder, which is sometimes called hypersexuality or sexual addiction. It is an intense focus on sexual fantasies, urges, or behaviors that cannot be controlled. You are unable to control those urges, those thoughts, those activities, right? Your world revolves around sex in some way, shape, or form. And this is where the difference between a sex addict and someone that just loves sex is. So it's important for you to understand the difference. Again, I'm going to say it again, right? An intense focus on sexual fantasies, urges, or behaviors that can't be controlled. This causes distress and problems for your health, your job, your relationships, your finances, and other parts of your life. So it's interfering in a major way with your life in terms of how you are able to conduct your life, how you're able to live. And when you're unable to stop that particular activity, then it becomes an addiction or a compulsive sexual behavior disorder, which is the new name, right? So you can't control it. It's out of your control. A lot of times we want to know what causes it. And there's some theories out there, we're not very sure, but some people say there's been some sort of trauma, right? There might have been a trauma in your life that caused your brain, part of your brain, there are different parts of the brain that will be involved that can actually make you hypersexual, right? Will make you think of sex a lot, right? So trauma. Neurological changes can happen with something like a seizure, right? If you have a seizure, that part of the brain that's affected might affect, like, say, for example, the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain was in the front, which controls your behavior, that might be affected and make you suddenly become a sex addict, right? So there can be reasons for this, right? Not just out of the blue. Emotional dysregulation, there is some people that say that there's some regulation issue with emotions and it becomes out of control. Um, there are bipolar mental disorders, bipolar disorders, which, you know, you get that mania, then you get just wild, and then you want to have sex. So there's some chemical imbalance there. And people say there's a mood, right? The mood, some people get into that mood where you just go crazy. So again, part of the bipolar hypomania episodes. 3% of the US population actually are sex addicts or have compulsive sexual behavior disorder. Most of them are men. We're not surprised about that. But 88% have a mental health disorder associated with the sexual addiction, okay? For example, we said before, mood disorder, anxiety disorder, suicide attempts, persistent personality disorder, right? Addiction disorders to other things, impulse control disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD. These are things that are associated with the sex addict. Now, if you have these, doesn't make you a sex addict. I'm just saying that a lot of sex addicts do have, this is what research says, this is not coming from me. And remember, I am not an expert on this, but I do see it. And I do want you to understand the difference. It's not just the ordinary person that loves sex. It has to interfere with your life. If it's not interfering with your life, it is not an addiction. If you're able to go to work, do your duties at home, play, when, like I said, when you want to play, you go out and play. You just don't stay in that particular room getting obsessed about the particular sexual fantasy. Then you're okay, as long as you're able to function, right? Bring home the money, right? So if you're not able to, then there's a problem, okay? Whenever you are having some of these behaviors, the question is not going to be, what are those signs that you see that you might be able to say, okay, I'm having an issue. So sometimes you might say, okay, I'm fine. But then there's some clues that will tell you what you might be experiencing that might lead you to suspect, or someone might say, hey, babe, I think you have a sex addiction problem, okay? Then you want to get some help, serious help, right? Some of the behaviors I'm going to list for you, and some of them are including losing sleep. So if you're not able to sleep well and all you do is think about sexual acts, sexual fantasies, you're going to know that that might be leading into an issue, meaning it's affecting your sleep, right? So if it's affecting your sleep, you just know that something's wrong. Now, if you're able to sleep, then you have no problem. You go to sleep, you're fine. It's if you're staying awake 24 hours a day, right? You're just not able to sleep. You go to work late, right? That's another thing on the list. You arrive late at work. Why? You were doing something regarding sex, masturbating, looking at porn when you shouldn't be. You should be going to work. So that is key. You're doing something you shouldn't be doing, and you know, and you're trying to stop it, and you can't. A lot of times they say it goes on for about 6 months. Not less than 6 months. The new diagnosis with the compulsive sexual behavior disorder says it has to be more than 6 months, right? 6 months or more. If it's less, they're not going to diagnose it, right? So remember, this is very, very delicate. It's a very controversial. It's been going on for the past decade. So you've got to understand this is not applying to you unless it interferes with your daily activities of living, okay? You're just sitting there doing nothing else but thinking about sex. So that is where it becomes an issue, and it's going on for 6 months, and you can't control it. You ignore your obligations. You're not doing what you should be doing. You don't open the mail. You're just sitting down there focusing on sex. You lie or you keep secrets. You don't want to tell people what you're doing. You need more and more and more to give you that high, to give you that joy. You reach acts and you're reckless and you do things that you would never do with people and in places, and you just realize, oh my God, this is not me. What's wrong? Something is wrong. Go and see a psychiatrist, see a therapist. You've got to get some help, okay? You're using porn most of the day. You're having sexual fantasies, urges, behaviors. you're having conflicts with your morals, your own morals are just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You're having religious issues in terms of, go to church, oh my gosh, I feel guilty, I feel bad. And your personal values are just, confused. You don't know what to value anymore because you're feeling guilty about what you're doing. So these are things that people go through when they're having that sexual addiction issue. Again, I'm going to keep on saying the compulsive sexual behavior disorder is the new name. So I'll be going between the two. But you feel guilty, you feel ashamed, you feel regret, you're feeling like sometimes even suicidal, depressed, right? Now remember, 988 is the new number you can call for suicide or any crisis, right? Any suicide line, crisis line, that's the number now, 988, and you can text it. Please remember, you have any issues, any concerns, any thoughts, negative thoughts, please get some help. And if you can't get help immediately, please dial 988 immediately. They will be there to help you and take you to where you need to be in terms of safety, right? They'll advise you in terms of what you've got to do. So please remember that number 988. So you really want to be able to identify whether you're going through any of those things that I just listed. Are you having those problems? And if you are, you need to reach out for help, please, because this is something that you don't want to let get worse, okay? Whenever you are feeling that, shame, guilt, you really want to sort of like get into that analysis in terms of therapy, but you also want to understand yourself that this is not something that cannot, get help. You can get help. You don't have to stay there and suffer by yourself. You can really, really get some people that will help you. So when you are being obsessive about sex, masturbating a lot, right? So people that masturbate so many times a day, I know people that masturbate many times a day, and they're fine. They go to work. And then there are people that masturbate and don't go to work, right? Sometimes you'll see that people are using paraphilia, I think I'm spelling it wrong, paraphernalia, and they're really having a problem with using other things and other people to excite themselves and do things that are really not in the usual mainstream of sex. But then again, if you do it and you're able to function, you're fine. For example, BDSM, right? Or if you're having sex with more than one person, there are people that do that and are able to function properly. But if you are not able to function and you're obsessed with that, then it becomes a sexual addiction, okay? Voyeurism, right? People that like to watch, people like to see. I love to watch. I love to see. I'm very visual, right? I love to hear. So visual and hearing is very important for me. Now, do I go to work and do my thing? Of course I do. Now, if I didn't go to work and I didn't do my thing, I definitely would have an issue in terms of having a sexual addiction, and I would have to get some help. So remember, it is not the fact that you're doing some of these things, it's whether you're able to function properly. And again, people are really, really frowning on sex addiction because they really think that people should be blamed for it. But can it be born with it? People ask, and some people say that you can be born with it, the sexual addiction. Again, something going on with the brain, something going on with the environment that can trigger things, right? So you really want to learn how to identify it and how to address it. But remember that you need to know that it has to affect your daily activities and it's interfering with your life. You're getting into trouble, right? The police are involved. You go to jail for sexual deviances, and you just don't know why and can't control it. That is where you're getting to the sexual addiction. Okay. STDs. Getting STDs on a frequent basis, right? Sleeping with strangers that you just walk into a room and you meet and you just decide to have sex recklessly. Again, you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to spend money recklessly, right? You don't want to go and spend money on all your porn sites and stuff like that. Then you're getting into trouble, right? So if you're doing that and it's interfering with your work, now if you're doing it and it's not interfering with your daily work and you're being productive, you are not an addict, okay? You've got to meet the criteria of not being able to control it, being very compulsive, meaning that it's like, oh my God, I've got to do it, and I can't say no, right? If you can say no, you can walk away, get up, walk away, you're fine. But if you cannot, that is the distinction between the two. Okay, so you know it's a problem. You know that you're not able to focus, and you're having relationship problems, and you're actually getting into drugs, right? Some people get into cocaine and just start using drugs again as a gateway, and they get into trouble, right? They're arrested, they're found in places where they shouldn't be, and then they get into these situations where jail might be involved. So you do not want to ignore those signs. Please get some help. Okay. Now, there are different groups that will help with your addiction. Okay. So there are people that will actually help you go through this. And if you reach out to them, it's based on the AA concept. We have the Sex Anonymous, we have the Sex Addicts Anonymous, we have the Sexaholic Anonymous, we have the Sex and Love Addict Anonymous, and we have the Sexual Compulsive Anonymous groups. They're all out there. You can just Google them and they will be there to help you, okay? You really want to make sure that you look at triggers and avoid those triggers if this is something that you are trying to stop, right? So get away from those things that make you um, go back to it, right? Don't do those same patterns, because some people say there's a neurological pathway that you develop once you start going down that road. So try and stop those triggers. Stay away from those triggers, right? They say stop the porn for those that cannot stop, control the porn addiction. So you want to be able to know those triggers and stay away from those triggers. Now, there are medications too that you can use that will help control to some degree the sex addiction. So we've got the antidepressants, we've got the anti-androgens, because sometimes your testosterone level is high and we need to bring it down because it's making you think too much about sex. Naltrexone also is used for alcohol and for some other drugs addiction. So what they found it's very helpful with sex addictions. We have mood stabilizers, right, for the bipolar patients. We have antipsychotics, anti-anxiety medications. We have psychotherapy, right, talking to someone and making sure that you are getting some help. And you definitely want to think about the cognitive behavioral therapy, because that's one of the ways they treat it, CBT, and acceptance therapy and motivational therapy. There are different ways that they can engage you and get you to not be addicted and help you beat this addiction. So remember, get some help, professional help. This is a serious problem if you have it. Again, it's rare, 3% of the US population, but if you are one of them, you can get help and you can beat it with some professional help. Just remember that, okay? And I did give you those groups that you can actually reach out to and talk to regarding getting some help in a group and have some therapy, okay? So again, I wanted to bring to your attention that there are people that can have all sorts of activities going on sexually, fantasies and fetishes and whatever you're doing, as long as you are not hurting anybody, you're not hurting yourself, you're not involving anyone else in your world of sex in terms of destroying anyone's life or making them affected or unhappy against their will. Make sure it's consensual. But you've got to realize that it's not an addiction if it is innocent and you're able to control it and you're able to get up and go about your merry way and do your thing. And I wanted to make sure you understood that, guys and gals. As long as he is doing his work and bringing home the dough, he's fine. And as long as you are doing your work, ladies, and bringing home the dough too, you'll be fine too. Okay? Just wanted to talk about that. And I will see you tomorrow and talk about something else. Okay, guys? Have a good night. Bye. Ciao.